we're absolute zealots around something we call the e-commerce equation, which is revenue as a function of traffic times conversion times price times availability. And I think that's very much the way that we think about accelerating brands, is just isolating those specific variables of the equation and really going to work on, okay, for traffic, for example, there's paid traffic, there's organic traffic, there's off-platform traffic, and what are all the hundreds of different kind of atomic levers that we want to pull and automate increasingly via AI for the brands that we represent, and then helping them set an expectation, helping them forecast appropriately, helping them understand what is their upside.
Welcome to the Ecomm Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level.
Are you tired of getting squeezed by Amazon, watching your BSRs fall, watching more overseas competitors come and overtake your market share, watching the race to the bottom pricing? Well, today's guest has the answer for you of how to diversify yourself off of Amazon and how to continue the profitable growth off of Amazon. Welcome to the Ecomm Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley. I scaled my own brand from 0 to 8 figures in sales, and now my mission is to take it to over 9 figures. On my journey to 9 figures, I bring you unfiltered conversations with the smartest minds in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Ezra Firestone, and Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth. Today, I'm excited to welcome to the show John LeBaron, the CRO at Pattern, the leading e-commerce accelerator that helps brands scale profitably across marketplaces worldwide. John runs the SaaS and services business units for Pattern and oversees all global go-to-market activities for the company and its partners. Prior to joining Pattern, John ran marketing for the Google Cloud business at Rackspace and has held a variety of global marketing roles with leading tech companies including Apple, Cisco, and Ciena. He holds an MBA from Kellogg School of Management, an MSW from Columbia University, and a BA in Communications from Brigham Young University. With that introduction, welcome to the show, John.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thanks for having me.
John, it's not often I have someone with so many acronyms behind their name on the podcast, but you've got a wealth of education behind you.
Yeah, it makes me think I spent too long in school listening to that bio. So thanks for making me feel old.
Hey, well, you've got, what I love though is you've got so many years and experience in international marketing. And I think that is extremely valuable, especially where we find ourselves in today's kind of like e-commerce landscape. With that being said, John, I would love for you to just give everybody like a brief overview of like, what is Pattern? I think many people have heard of it. I know you guys have your own conference that you do every year as well. So why don't you give people a quick overview of like what Pattern does and why you're working with so many different e-commerce brand owners right now?
Yeah, you bet. So when I joined the company 8 years ago, it was actually called iServe, which some people may remember if you've been in the space long enough. We are Amazon's largest seller. We are also a gold star partner on Tmall, and we also represent a ton of brands across more than 60 marketplaces, including TikTok, Target, Walmart, etc. And super excited to be able to work with you guys and help any of your audience members. And basically, if you think about Pattern, we kind of grew up on the buy-sell model. So we work with probably more than 300 brands on this buy your inventory and then represent you on these marketplaces around the world, take you global. And it's all around profitable growth. And so I guess the value proposition is more or less like, do we think we can do it better, faster, cheaper than you could do it on your own and grow you more profitably than you could do on your own? So that's kind of the value proposition. We work with a number of huge brands like Nestle and Tumi and Sylvania and Panasonic and a ton of big brands like that. And so we're super data driven. We have a technology platform. We have more than 29 patents and more than 400 people working on development and AI. And so it's a super fun business. And I would say like what Pattern is compared to what it was, we continue to innovate and grow and evolve. And so I think that's what's kept me here for these 8 years. And we continue to sell on new platforms, can innovate the business model and the products that we offer. And so just generally, I think we're super dialed in and thinking about the experience that we have and that we can offer to these respective brand partners. and try to be a good citizen kind of in this e-commerce space and learn from other people and deliver a solid opportunity and experience to the brands that we work with.
Awesome. Well, I love that. Well, and with that territory comes with working with a lot of different brands and seeing what's working, what's not working. And I think you are familiar with this. Like the story for the last, I feel like 18 months on Amazon has been, hey, lots of people losing bestseller rankings, bestseller badges, lots of pressure from overseas competition with the impact of tariffs and FBA fees. Margins are getting squeezed, and it just seems to be like a race to the bottom. Nobody's increasing prices. Instead, prices are only getting cheaper on Amazon. Is that what you're seeing from brand owners that are coming to you? And what are some of the things that you guys are helping them with to try to like correct those problems where there is a decline in growth and they're no longer like the easy button is no longer there on Amazon like it once was?
Yeah, I mean, everything you just talked about is 100% what we deal with day to day. I think the incursion of, overseas sellers that we've heard, some represent 40 to 50% of all sales on the platform are kind of these Chinese or overseas sellers. I think, Amazon has tried to squeak out more margin on their logistics front, with inbound placement fees and discontinuing prep. They're starting to, have an incursion on CPCs on a more aggressive stance than we've ever seen. I think they're a $50 billion advertising company at this point, which is, pretty daunting as well. So I think that the squeeze, so to speak, that brands are facing is 100% real. This kind of softness in growth, or, hey, it doesn't seem as easy to grow as it used to be. This is getting super complex, is absolutely a recurring theme. I think in terms of, as I again started 8 years ago, Amazon was often the fastest growing channel for brands. Sometimes it was the most profitable, sometimes it wasn't. But I would say, it's a bad time to set up shop as quote unquote an accelerator, because a lot of brands you talk to are like, I don't need an accelerator. I'm accelerating just fine. And so the tables have absolutely turned. That makes it harder for us to accelerate brands for sure. But I think, that layered on with the complexity across all of these different functions. And if you've ever heard us talk or visit our website or, whatever, I think we're absolute zealots around something we call the e-commerce equation, which is revenue as a function of traffic times conversion times price times availability. And I think that's very much the way that we think about accelerating brands, is just isolating those specific variables of the equation and really going to work on, okay, for traffic, for example, there's paid traffic, there's organic traffic, there's off-platform traffic, and what are all the hundreds of different kind of atomic levers that we want to pull and automate increasingly via AI for the brands that we represent, and then helping them set an expectation, helping them forecast appropriately, helping them understand what is their upside. We're sitting across 46 trillion data points, and really helping connect the dots for those brands to give them a realistic perception of what is my upside? Where do I have easy winnability across my different keywords that I'm not bidding on today that I should be? And so I think as we can provide more transparency, more clarity around those levers to pull, and more true like fidelity around what their actual upside is, it's really up to the brand on whether or not, quote unquote, the premium of working with someone like a Pattern is worth it, or whether they think they can do it on their own. And, it's not really up for us to say what that looks like, but I would say, we're seeing a lot of acceleration in the business. And I think it's an important signal for brands. Hey, this is getting pretty complex for them to do it. And yeah, margins are kind of shrinking, but the cost of doing it on their own is in some cases prohibitively expensive versus kind of quote unquote the tax they might pay to accelerate using someone like a Pattern.
I love it. So, John, I'm sure the listeners are probably like, "Hey, what is the magic sauce? What's the secret behind your guys' success there? What are you guys able to do? Let's say there's a new brand owner and they want to come to you guys. What are the different levers that you guys are able to pull specifically on Amazon today that's able to like accelerate growth? What are some of the mistakes you're seeing being made by brand owners? What are some of the levers that you're like, oh, you haven't been doing this, this, and this? Like, we're easily going to turn that on, and that's going to help you be more defensible, et cetera. Maybe walk me through how you work with like a new brand owner and some of those levers that you're helping them pull.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the at the very highest level, it just starts with control. How in control is the brand? Because control at the atomic level, so to speak, is very much a microcosm of control at the macro level. And if you don't control kind of the easiest things like who is selling your product, or, are you in stock? Those are kind of like the easiest kind of layers. And then you can kind of build up from there. But I would say that the lack of control often gets magnified across the rest of your channels, not only on Amazon, but across everything. And so that's probably the number one thing that we really focus with on brands. And again, this may not be as applicable to some of your sellers because some of the sellers, maybe, I guess they could be arbitrage sellers. They could be sellers like a Pattern where they partner exclusively with a brand, or they could be brand owners themselves selling and going through. But I would say, almost universally, we find a lack of control as a rate limiter on the growth of a given brand. And so as we think about that e-commerce equation, maybe I'll start at the far end, availability. Like, are you in stock? If you're not in stock, why? And what piece of your availability is shipping Prime, for example? We know that if you're not shipping Prime and you're shipping, kind of snail mail or even out of your own facility, the gone are some of the days of like seller fulfilled Prime or FBA on site or some of these other programs. We still are actually involved in a lot of those because we kind of grew up in this world and have a lot of grandfathered kind of things that we do. But I would say as a general rule, like that's an easy thing to kind of fix often. I guess like profitability notwithstanding, there's a lot of good reasons not to have stuff go FBA. But that's a thing that we look at a lot. And I guess like some of the reasons you might not want to go FBA, given some of the new placement fees, is it's incredibly complex to make sure that you kind of have what I would call edge of the network. I grew up in the kind of like optical networking space and building, data centers and networking and things like that. But you think about the corollary of, Meta and Netflix, et cetera, getting their content to the edge of the network is really, really important. And FBA or Walmart Fulfillment Center or Fulfilled by TikTok and all this other stuff is very much to that same kind of a thing. And so if you cannot get your inventory to that edge of the network, your BSR will suffer. You will not be shown in as many searches. You won't have as many glance views as those that are really, really good at it. Again, some of the rate limiters that we see with a lot of brands is like, it's kind of expensive. Maybe they're paying a lot of inbound placement fees, maybe to ship to a number of different facilities to accommodate that. They're going to have to extend themselves on inventory. And maybe that's just not from a cash flow perspective, a sustainable option. But not only that, especially like this time of year, we're recording this in October. I know this is going to be in February. So, but think about just like the holiday season and how long does it take you to get into those fulfillment centers? Like Pattern has the benefit of scale. And so our turnaround from like our cross dock into actually being in stock in Amazon is often less than 48 hours, which is just, I hear brands talking about like, it takes us 3 weeks. Like we're trying to set up appointments to get in our inventory in September, October, and Amazon saying it's too late. And so we actually have a number of large sellers that are using us as a 3PL at this point. That's a fairly new service that we started to offer. And sometimes we'll do the prep for them. Sometimes we'll ship inbound. Sometimes they'll only use us for our middle mile infrastructure to get into those because, again, we're shipping skis and luggage and pill bottles and stuff like that. And so the density matters. Someone can actually ship to one location, full truckload, and then ensure that their products are also getting full truckload into that edge of the network. That becomes, a pretty simple thing. I say in terms of, that pricing component and basket size, so to speak, that is also really affected by the control. Because if you have a lot of other sellers that are kind of forcing that race to the bottom with Amazon, you're going to have a degradation in pricing. So that's another thing that we look at with brands is what is the kind of trajectory of pricing over time? And is it collapsing? And we run full, pretty aggressive, because of the data we sit on, pretty aggressive like price elasticity analysis of demand to help brands understand, okay, what are their competitors pricing at? What do we think their upside is? In the category, if you raise price, what is going to happen? And I would say that we've successfully raised price on probably more than half of our brands, even this year alone. And so I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion that price is that lever. It's the easiest lever to pull, but it's also the most punitive lever to pull. And then when you think about, I don't want to go on forever here, but if you think about traffic and conversion, there is a lot from a data-driven perspective that you can do to optimize. And I would say, back to your question, what are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing? I mean, at a very high level, not optimizing their content in a very data-driven way, kind of using what I would call best practices, but not really I mean, you can look at the keyword level, conversion level at the conversion rates at the keyword level to understand across your whole category. Now, this is hard at scale, but AI is making this way easier to understand kind of the micro changes you should be making to your content to convert at a higher level. I'm happy to provide ample examples there. On the traffic perspective, what we see very often, brands kind of renting keywords versus owning keywords. And it's because the rents are going up all across the kind of marketplace. It is just becoming somewhat untenable, and budgets are getting exhausted early days, despite even things like, algorithmic bidding and day parting and some of these like fancy sorts of like topics. It doesn't matter if you're bidding on the wrong keywords and you don't actually ever own those organically. You're kind of on a race on a treadmill that is not probably going to get better before it's going to get worse. And so I think that's generally the tenor that we go in with brands. And again, we own the patent on this, so it's easier for us, but it's like really working with brands to understand, where do you have mathematical propensity to win across keywords, and where can we start to reinvest dollars into those so that you're not just renting, you're renting to own. And so you're renting, and then eventually, like I would say the number one thing that we see across the brands we work with is the keywords on which they are winning organically is increasing over time. If that is not happening with a brand, they should fire us immediately. But that's what we see. And those keywords become annuities through which the brand can start to generate revenue, own revenue, and then either be able to invest that in other types of areas or take it back to the bottom line to offset some of those rising costs they're seeing in some of those other areas that I discussed.
Yeah, John, really good summary. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think suffice it to say, I mean, you talked about three things, right? Three, I think, key levers that people can really identify with, which is number one, like, are you in stock, right? And I think this comes down to forecasting and supply chain, and it comes down to like efficiency. What I find a lot of sellers get stuck with is like last minute trying to schedule something into Q4, right? And it's like, that's not going to happen. Like, you need to be scheduling those appointments out for Q4 back in July, right? To make sure like you're locked and loaded. You've already got your inventory planned coming in. And I think like at the scale you guys are at, as you said, like it's truckloads of stuff coming into fulfillment centers. And so while most people are waiting 3 weeks for something to actually be fully received into FBA, your guys' opportunity to get stuff in within 48 hours is unspeakable. So with that, I think, John, talk to everybody a little bit more about that new service that you guys opened up, because I do think that this like supply chain, although it may be unsexy and it's not the shiny marketing hack or something that we're talking about, but this efficiency of being able to say, hey, I'm reducing my inbounding time from maybe it's 3 or 4 weeks down to 48 hours. Imagine the impact that that's going to have to your cash conversion cycle, right? But number two, just availability, right? With more availability in Amazon's FBA system, like your organic rankings will naturally benefit from that, because as soon as like Amazon sees there's no, inventory on the East Coast, like your rankings fall off the face of the earth on the East Coast, but you'll still stay ranked really well on the West Coast, because that's where you still have your remaining inventory. So John, talk to us a little bit more about like that unique offering that you guys just came out with.
Yeah, so it's basically like a 3PL. And we started to realize like, hey, actually, if we're shipping, call it 70 million units a year, we do more shipping of goods than some brands. We do more shipping in the night shift than some brands do all year. And so the scale at which we are shipping is almost incomprehensible. And what we started to realize is like, well, we're actually being penalized as well. We're the largest seller on Amazon, and we're also the largest shipper. And so what we started to realize is like, well, actually, we need density just as much as any other brand. Like the cost differential, if we ship something full truckload into, Indiana or Concord or anywhere else, if we ship a full truckload, we are talking about like per unit, variable costs of like single cents, basically. If that has to go LTL or less than a truckload, that number jumps for us on a variable cost per unit up like in some cases 5 to 10x. And then like forget about it. If you have to ship parcel or overnight or anything else like that, it just like blows through the roof. And so it's not just like marginally better. If you can go full truckload, it is crazy better. So you think about that piece of it. So we started to say like, well, what if we just offered this service to other people at a fairly competitive rate? We think we could make good margin on that business. And we're like used to like a super, like if you look at Pattern's now a public company, so you actually go look at our margins, but we're in the single digit kind of like profitability, EBITDA sort of numbers. And so we're used to running on a pretty thin margin. And so if we could kind of run this business at a thin margin, but then also kind of add accretive value to our core business, that's kind of a win-win. It's a win-win for us. It's a win-win for the brands. Maybe they pay less than a competitor. And then we all kind of benefit together. And so that's like at the, what I call unit economic level. But we've worked with a number of big brands that have kind of come over and started to use this. And so there's kind of like a marketplace prep kind of component. And I'm not the expert on this, but there's a marketplace prep kind of component that we'll do for brands. Like you got pill bottles, you got hazmat stuff, you got stuff that needs to be polybagged, like whatever it looks like. Some brands are good at this. Other brands like kind of suck at it. It's like not a core competency. And honestly, a lot of 3PLs don't do it. And Amazon is obviously incredibly punitive. They would literally shut down your account if you ship too many bad prep sort of like products into their warehouses. And so, we have, I think, one of the lowest order defect rates in all of Amazon, because like this is a machine. All of our conveyance systems, everything that's set up as a cross dock, like product come in, they get on levers, they get pushed out. Like we turn this around very, very quickly. And maybe it's not 48 hours, maybe it's 72 hours, maybe it is even longer, but it's like dramatically lower. Why? Because we actually own our own freight companies now. We own our own trucks. We have standing appointments with every major Amazon warehouse, basically, and they know that to accept it. And they know, again, that our goods are going to be good with fluid loading all of our trailers. They're getting in, they're getting out, and the order defect rate is very, very low. And so like Amazon has no kind of like incentive other than to prioritize Pattern's trucks because A, of our standing appointments, but B, because we kind of own this end-to-end piece. And then I would say like, okay, if you don't need help with the prep, maybe you have like pretty simple things and they're just going to go commingled into Amazon, but you're kind of like, I am losing money now by shipping to 7 warehouses instead of 1 or 13 warehouses instead of 2. What if I just ship to Pattern? And then Pattern actually takes care of that middle mile. A, I probably save on cost. And then B, to your point, I probably save on that cash conversion cycle because Pattern's going to get it faster into those warehouses than I am. And so that's another piece. And we're starting on reverse logistics and re-commerce now. Like that is becoming an increasing amount of our focus. And I think, this month is the first month where more goods will go through our facility that are not ours. We don't own them. We don't own the title on them. Not partnered through that kind of like 3PL business. Then our core partner in businesses. And again, I think it's a very virtuous cycle, but I think it's us focusing on the most minute details and really focusing on that because we have no option to, because our margins are so thin. You really just have to think about it at the most granular level and then build up from there. And I would say we have the smartest minds in the business doing this. We have people who worked at Amazon for more than a decade running robotics centers, running actual FCs. And, that expertise not only helps us get more lean and efficient, but it actually helps us create more partnerships and bridges across both Amazon as well as, whatever, Chewy and Wayfair and some of these other major Walmart, TikTok, et cetera. It's creating us definitely a force to be reckoned with in that fulfillment and logistics space, as unsexy as it may be to you. Yeah, no, I love that. And the scale at which you guys are doing things is definitely bringing down costs. And so for anybody that has seen their own shipping into Amazon dramatically increase, and if that is still a pain point, I think this is a great option to look into. And it's easy, right? Like, I'm not here to like bait and switch anyone or make it sound better than it is. If you go to pattern.com and you can actually just bid it out yourself. You can sign up online without ever talking to a human being. There are no contracts on all these. You could use us just for the holidays and then not use us for something else. Like, we're trying to make it as dead simple and frictionless as possible. and attracting the brightest minds in the business to go make it a reality as well. So I hope it continues to be a good service out to people who are kind of struggling with this. And again, it actually just reinforces our kind of competitive advantage and mode as well.
Love it. John, another thing that you talked about is, it's the traffic and then it's the conversion equation, right? And I think that conversion rate optimization is something that people don't spend enough time on. And I think there's a number of different things that you could be working on, whether it's your keywords in your title, whether it's your main image, it's your bullets, it's the copy, it's the A+ content. So where do you guys go to optimize your listings? What have you seen as like some of the best levers to impact conversion rates, especially when you're trying to target specific keywords?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, we're literally managing tens of thousands of ASINs at this point. And so getting very, very hyper focused on, there'll be a recurring theme of just like this atomic kind of particles of what to kind of do. And I would say the days of like keyword stuffing or back end stuff, like it's just, the easy stuff is now gone. And now we get into like the master class of how to actually improve the conversion rate. And I think, again, the tricky thing is it's getting more complexity. And by the way, it's only going to get more complex because Amazon is not doing variable content quite yet. I think they're testing around with it. But we will get to a point probably in the near future, maybe even by the time this podcast airs, where Amazon allows you to start doing dynamic content based on keyword, based on timing. You think about, okay, half of my people want to buy over Black Friday and Christmas, and maybe I sell Christmas lights, and another half of my persona is like weddings and parties and stuff like that. Well, if I knew the keywords that were leading to that specific, detail page, and I could actually dynamically render content at the ASIN or at the detail page, or even on my A+ content, or even on my brand store, if I could do that by keyword and I could actually match to the persona, that would actually increase my conversion rate. So we're not quite there yet, and it's going to get pretty tricky. And I saw like a tweet the other day. Again, this is going to be outdated by the time this airs, but of True Classic, and it was showing how Meta was like hijacking the listing, and it turned it into like a grandma. It was like this young guy wearing like sweats, and like they've I think launched like a new super like comfy like sweatshirts and stuff. And Meta actually hijacked their ad and started running it without their permission. It was like a grandma in like sweats, and he's like, "This is the craziest use of AI ever." And so, like the boundaries and back to that control paradigm are even more important. And so we have this other product called Product Experience Management, PXM, that our own teams use. And we are now making available, again, to any kind of seller or any kind of brand that wants to use that a la carte. That was always like the hardest part for Pattern, is we kind of had this like all you can eat buffet. You have to let us buy your inventory model. And we're starting to kind of innovate on disaggregating some of those things and making them available, whether it's logistics, whether it's now content and conversion. But we basically go in and analyze every single keyword in the category that is leading to a conversion. We look at every single headline and title. We use AI to scan every single image and break those into what we call image archetypes. We think there are more than 20 different image archetypes. Think about like a lifestyle image would be an archetype, or a proof point, or a testimonial sort of type of thing, or a close-up of the product. Those are the types of archetypes that we use. But if we know all the keywords that are leading to traffic to a listing, and we also know all of the products that are converting into revenue, and we also know all of the different variables that lead toward that conversion, aka the attributes that are being showed, as well as all of the archetype conversions, we can start to triangulate and start to understand, okay, well, we know that in this category, products that use this type of attribute and are this prevalent. Like, so for example, let me think of like a robot vacuum. We could go in and basically say, hey, all of the robot, Ryobi, or I can't remember all, like Shark Ninja, all the different like, kind of iRobot, I should say, that have these types of products, and there's a bunch of Chinese knockoffs in there as well, obviously. We know that all of the products that say supports edge cleaning, we know that only 20% of the products actually use that attribute somewhere in their listing or in their A+ content. But we know that products with that with that attribute featured represent more than 70% of the sales. This creates like this arbitrage opportunity for smart-minded, intelligent atomic level types of people that can go in and start to say, wow, I probably need to update my image or my content with this like supports edge cleaning sort of thing. And if we can statistically show that that's different, there might be like call it like a baseline number of attributes that are hard to interpolate whether that actually creates lift or it doesn't. But there's a whole subset of others that we know actually drive that conversion. And so instead of thinking like, I'm going to hire an agency to just develop my creative and maybe I'm going to use my brand standards, getting hyper focused on like what actually drives conversion. Could be micronized creatine. It could be supports edge cleaning. There are literally hundreds of these examples, but it's very hard to discern that until you interpolate all of that. And then I would say like another just easy miss on the conversion. And this is where like a lot of, I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but a lot of these types of like, call it PIM and DAM solutions, they're very invested on helping you syndicate your content, but they're not really invested so far that we've seen on like telling you whether it matches. We were a huge Salesforce customer forever, but like they have like a 19% fail rate on their uploads into Amazon. And it's not even their fault. They have great tech, but Amazon, for whatever reason, everybody knows this. They'll be like, for whatever reason, I let some other third-party seller hijack this listing, or even though you told me to update the content and I had brand registry, I just decided not to for whatever reason. And so there's kind of like this weird black hole that ends up happening, and it's super opaque and obscure. And so we're like, well, let's just develop tech that actually, okay, what is your source of truth on the content? Now let's go measure pretty regularly whether or not that content in your source of truth that is in your PIM and DAM, that therefore is there in Seller Central or Vendor Central, that then is actually at the live listing. And you would be shocked. I mean, you probably wouldn't be shocked, but like we're talking about orders of magnitude of like 20%, 30% of your content doesn't even match what you said you wanted it to match. And that's a huge liability on your conversion rate, because not only legally as well, right? Like if you have claims or something like that and it just doesn't match, like you literally could be sued. So getting back to basics and being like, does the content I want to show up actually match? Is it actually live? And if it's not, you got to go re-upload it again, or you got to manually do it. And we have, thousands of employees basically at this point that are all invested at making sure that loop, that feedback loop is as automated and as crisp as possible. We do have brands that have 99% match rate of their content. And then we talk about, well, how do you actually optimize that content? And everything that I just walked through on the archetypes and the attributes and all that other stuff. Then you start to say like, well, let's A/B test this. Like the data is showing that we should make this change. Let's do this and have a holdout for this amount of time. And let's see if the conversion rate starts to improve. And so we've seen double-digit increases of conversion rates on the brands that we've started to run this with. And it's super exciting, because back to the e-commerce equation, if everything else stays flat, let's say I do nothing else, but I make that change, mathematically, if I improve my conversion rate 20%, my revenue goes up 20%. And so to your point, it's like the easiest thing you can do to improve your revenue is actually to focus on conversion. But it's incredibly complex, and it can be like pretty daunting, especially if all those other levers are a little bit sloppy. And then I guess the last thing that I'll say on that conversion piece is, AI has been this like promise of like, oh, let's just use AI. Well, we started using AI to test out. And what we found is, as everyone probably has found out as well, like AI hallucinates a lot and it's wrong a lot. And we would start to see, we're pretty heavy in like the vitamins and supplement space. But if you use like this is a brand partner, but not on the buy sell, but like Relight, like, it might say like, it might spell it wrong. This little kind of like leaf on here might be totally like janky on the AI rendering. Like it looks good from afar, and then you look in and it's like, instead of saying dietary supplement, or instead of a blue blend, it might be like a totally different color, or instead of 60 servings, it might say like 51. And so it just wasn't really plausible. And so what we started to do is we created something called the portal. And this is literally a 3D hardware, which is a rotating table with an actual like AI hand, as well as an AI. And you could go look on our website and kind of check out the portal. But a robotic arm with the camera on it. And then we kind of put LCD screens. We got patents pending on this now, but LCD screens around this that basically take an image. Instead of like, we would rent we'd rent houses to do full day photo shoots with our brands, because we do the creative for our brands in many cases as well. And it took a long time and it was prohibitively expensive. So now with the portal, we can actually shoot Parisian cafes or skiing, or we can get all of this stuff, and that kind of like hardware combined with the advances in software. If everyone's familiar with like Nano Banana and like all the like LLMs that are building all these engines. When we talk to brands today, it's like, how many people are using AI for images? Tons of hands go up. Okay. How many people actually have used it on their Amazon detail pages? Way fewer hands go up. Okay. Who actually has a live listing on Amazon today using AI images that they created? It's still usually like zero. I think I've started to see like 1 or 2 hands come up. And so there's a huge amount of trepidation today with brands to start to fully embrace, because of a lot of the hallucinations and challenges that I talked about. But if you can use that type of a hardware and combine it with this, now we're starting to actually have real, and it's all data driven around what do we think the archetypes need to be for these brands. We're starting to do massive conversion improvements at scale, but it's only available because of, again, this fanatical detail on the smallest detail, fanatical focus on the smallest details, as well as a lot of the advances that are happening in AI that are making this like, we actually have a shot and a run at this, and I expect massive conversion gains across our portfolio because of this.
Yeah, I love that you talked about that you guys have like 20 different like archetypes for the images. And as you guys are looking at optimizing main images and overall conversion optimization, you're not just looking at one data point in a silo. And I think that's the important aspect, is like the more as e-commerce becomes more complex, it just is becoming more data science at the end of the day,
100%.
Which is just being able to feed in lots of data. And so I think that's where, AI is going to be able to help digest things a lot faster for us. But I just think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to, hey, look at everything going on in the marketplace. Look at this product category as a whole. Look at the top brands. What are they doing that's unique or different that's allowing them to beat these other brands? And then applying some of those tactics into your own listing. So I think that's a great takeaway. The other thing that you talked about that I think was like really well pointed was on PPC, and are you just renting keywords? And I think this is a trap that a lot of brands get themselves stuck into, where, hey, I'm maybe not ranking organically for a keyword, but I'm profitable when I'm advertising for this keyword. And that might be a fine answer for today. But 3 years from now, are you going to be profitable on that keyword? More likely than not, with the increase of competition, CPCs are only going to increase, and there's going to be new advancements in those product categories. And so like your relevancy is probably going to decrease overall. And so your tacos that, although they're profitable now, may explode. Maybe it's 12 months from now, maybe it's 24 months from now. But to your point, you talked about how PPC should only be there to help you acquire and actually obtain, like you're not just renting that PPC keyword indefinitely, like you're like renting to own, so to speak, right? You rent that keyword to eventually own that keyword from an organic standpoint. And if you're not, there's probably issues with your product. There's conversion issues that are impacting that as well. But I think the complexity, like we can talk about this and it all sounds great. I think the brand owners are having problems with, well, if I were to actually like focus on every single keyword, like I've got hundreds, if not thousands of keywords to focus on. So how does one person actually do that? How are you guys managing PPC and helping brand owners? I mean, it's, yes, using AI tools, but at the same token, like incorporating human intelligence there to ensure that like the hallucinations aren't having you spend a bunch of money on a bunch of random keywords that you're like, no, this is not even smart.
Yeah. So I think, one of the challenges is you're almost like the whole industry is kind of conspiring against brands and sellers in some cases. Amazon has an incentive to make you waste money because that's like high margin business for them. That's how they become that $50 billion ad company. The agencies that work on are kind of incented to have you spend more because a lot of them make their money as a percentage of ad spend, right? And so that they're kind of conspiring against this whole thing. And then I think the reporting is kind of janky too, where it's like, depending on if you're 1P or 3P, like even the bounds of which they take attribution credit is also there. And so the reporting even gives you this false, like, oh, I need to be focusing on ACoS and ROAS because like those are the numbers, but like everyone kind of knows they're not actually true because Amazon has this attribution window and back to like the conspiring of the reporting plus the agency models plus Amazon. It's like, well, I would be shocked if anyone that's listening ever had someone be like, you should spend less on advertising. Like everyone always wants to be like, you should spend more. It's working. Like you have this good ROAS. And it's like, well, the easiest way to juice your ROAS is just to bid on more branded keywords, right? Like that's the easiest way to do it because you're basically cannibalizing traffic that's happening. And so as we kind of do the forensic work with a lot of brands, we see that happening all the time. Their proportion of how much they should be doing on conquesting versus defensive or branded versus non-branded are oftentimes fairly out of whack. And that's like a symptom of some of the like challenges that I just talked about. The other thing is like if they're spending a lot of money on keywords and advertising and bids that don't ever convert. And so they're just like literally just like flushing money down the toilet. I'm like, okay, stop this. There's no halo effect here. Like, let's just stop spending money on things that do not convert. And I would say like, yeah, if anyone's listening here, we have a free tool on Pattern's website. If you want it, it's kind of buried, I guess, a little bit. I think it's under resource. It's called a digital shelf. You can type in any ASIN on Amazon, and it'll basically show you your actual digital shelf, your closest competitors. And what it does is, again, back to this, like I'm showing a relight. I don't know if people are watching, but it's like, this is like an electrolyte. So if I were to go on here and look up this product, this is a pina colada flavor, then it would show me, okay, here are all the keywords, and it wouldn't show me the keywords, but it would tell me like what's happening behind the scenes is showing me all the keywords on which this product is ranking, whether it's ranking number organically, whether it's ranking number 1 or 5 or 500. Here are all the different keywords. It's like a family tree of all the keywords that ladder up and drive traffic to this listing. Then what it does is it says, well, what are all the other products on Amazon that keywords are that are also many of the same keywords are driving traffic to their listing. Now that's kind of like a 2x2 matrix. So it looks like frequency of keywords also driving traffic to these products. Then it looks like correlated search of like, okay, when this product shows up number 3 organically, who's number on a keyword, on one keyword? Who's ranking number 4 and number 5 or number 2 and number 4? When this product ranks like number 70, who's number 71 and who's number 69? So it looks for like clustering. And then what you basically see is like, okay, here are the other products that rank most frequently and closest to you on the shelf across the highest number of keywords. And a couple of things that predictably you end up finding is like, well, some products that show up next to you quite frequently across the most number of keywords are actually other products that you sell. This is the orange version. I got the pina colada. So like that makes sense. That's what happens at retail as well. Your products are close to each other. But the other thing that you start to see is like, holy crap, that product that is competing, I don't see them in Walmart. I don't see them in Target, but they are competing. Like that's actually kind of surprising to me. And then what you can start to do, again, we do this dynamically, we own the patent on it, but I think anyone could kind of like conceivably do of the poor man's version of it, which is like, we'll find if Amazon effectively sees this other product, I don't think I have another one here with me, but I'll just tell you like Element is another electrolyte. And maybe, I don't know if it is, I haven't looked at this specific product, but think about like Element or Liquid IV or, one of those types of products. And what you kind of are theoretically saying is like, okay, Amazon is seeing these as substitutable replacements because across the most number of keywords, it shows both products organically next to each other. And so Amazon's basically showing or inferring these are kind of substitutable replacements. So what you want to do is like, well, what are all the organic keywords on which Element is ranking on? Because in theory, Relight should be ranking on a lot of those same keywords because Amazon is showing them as substitutable replacements. And that's, again, like just like the data behind that is like, oh gosh, there's a bunch of like Spanish keywords I should be ranking on that I'm not because Element is ranking on those. Or like electrolytes for perimenopausal women over 45, I should be ranking on that because Element is ranking on those as well. And so that is like, well, you should start bidding on those keywords as well because you will start to improve your organic rank. Now, that paired with that like algorithmic bidding system is like, we know hundreds of keywords on which you as a product should be ranking organically. You have what we call destiny. you are destined to win on that subset of keywords. You have high winnability, and fine. Let's just like if that's the hypothesis that you have a high winnability on electrolytes for perimenopausal women over 45, if that is the keyword, and let's just say it's driving 41 clicks a day, fine. Let's start bidding on that keyword, and maybe the bid on that keyword is like 26 cents, whereas electrolyte is like $7 a click. So that's kind of like the math behind what's happening in our Destiny software, and why we've been so effective is you start to bid. Let's start the bid. If it's 26 cents, let's start the bid at 7 cents, and let's let it go for like, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours. If you don't get any impressions, raise the bid from 7 cents to like 15 cents, and let's let that run. If you still don't get any glance views or impressions, fine. Let's raise the bid. If the average is 26, let's raise it to 22. Okay, now we're starting to get some bids. Let's hold it. This is the algorithmic. This is all the rules built into it. Let's hold it. If I start to get views but no clicks, probably need to raise it. Okay, now we're up to 23 cents. So 3 cents cheaper than the median, or the recommended bid, but fine, let's hold it. Okay, now I start to get clicks. Well, if I start to get clicks but I don't get conversions, okay, let's just try a different keyword. Maybe the AI was wrong. Let's like not do this. But we're making more than 13 million bid changes a day across this methodology. And what you start to see is like we're dramatically spending less, both from a price per click, but as well as what was the strategy before? Oh, you were spending $7 a click and you weren't getting conversions. Well, you didn't have winnability on that because maybe your reviews aren't as strong, or your price is more expensive as a premium. Like, let's build your way up. And what we start to see is like, if you looked at our brands versus the digital shelf, oftentimes we are ranking on more organic keywords than the competitors, often by a function of like 2x to 10x. And it's not black hat. There's nothing shady about it. It is just mathing out where you have like winnability. And I think it's just a glorious thing. You're just creating annuities for these brands that are owning keywords. And then again, they're not a lot of sexy keywords. Maybe they're in Spanish. Maybe they're like long tail stuff. But the aggregate of it is like you get 10 clicks here and 12 clicks here and whatever. But again, the beauty is because you have inherent winnability on those keywords, your conversion rate on those keywords also improves. And it starts to create this like virtuous cycle where Amazon actually starts to feed you more keywords that it thinks you might actually rank for. And I guess the final kind of denouement on this full circle is like, okay, well, like, what is the ROAS on that? Well, there is no ROAS because you didn't spend anything on it. I mean, I guess you did in the beginning, but like in the end of the day, you're starting to get sales on things you're not advertising for. And that is never going to show up in the ROAS report. And so I think at some level, you have to be willing to divorce yourself, suspend belief on the like conspiring infrastructure, and just take a step back and be like, okay, but like, where am I ranking organically that I was not 2 months ago or 6 months ago or 6 years ago? And wow, these are now creating, and I guess I did advertise 5 years ago on that keyword, and then it became just like this thing. And by the way, we call winning in the top 4. So and we monitor this like nonstop. And so when it drops to 5, you're no longer winning. Fine, juice the ad spend. Let's see if we can get you back up to winning territory, or go chase another that you're winning 7 on that we want to get up to 4. And so I think it's just a testament to, again, that hard work and being willing to math it out and take that data science advantage and be willing to test and be willing to admit like, okay, this is not working. Let's back it off. And we've got another 150 or 2,000 keywords in the queue. And let's burn our way through this and see if we can improve it. And I would just say that's one motion on the traffic. But as you work on conversion, it's a super symbiotic relationship, as I'm sure everyone on this podcast knows, but we start to see some pretty phenomenal gains.
Yeah, John, I love everything that you dove into there. And I think like one of the biggest advantages is like the years of experience have compounded into being able to create this type of software and these patents that are enabling you to take all of these rules, things that you've learned, put them into a system and be able to like 10x your productivity, be able to do more with less. And I think that's what, when people come and work with any of your tools, and I love that you're starting to like separate those out for, the common, public that doesn't have a brand relationship with you, right? And so it's going to be interesting to see how your guys's brand continues to unfold as you guys continue to work with more and more sellers and across many different platforms. We only talked about Amazon today, but you guys touch so many other different omni-channel platforms that I think it makes it super impactful.
Yeah, for sure.
John, as we wrap things up, I love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways from every episode. So here are the 3 actionable takeaways that I noted. You let me know if I'm missing something. But action item number 1, the first and foremost, you have to be in stock, right? That is the Bible rule number 1 for any seller on Amazon, which is always be in stock, right? Because I think everybody has seen what happens the day you go out of stock. If you're out of stock for more than a couple weeks, your competitors begin taking over. And then Amazon starts collecting some bad data against you, saying that, hey, we're seeing 0 sales, so your ranking begins to fall. There are countless stories of brand owners that have literally seen their ASIN completely get deranked just by being out of stock, and they've never been able to recover. So an important thing to focus on is like, do you have a good supply chain strategy and forecasting behind you? And if that's not something that you're actively pursuing or sleeping on, I think that's the foundation that you have to build upon. Because if you don't have that first foundation, like any shiny, gimmicky, like marketing tactics that you're going to employ will only work temporarily if you're always battling getting products in stock at Amazon.
Totally.
Action item number 2 is working on your conversion rates for your product. And this is something that I think, again, people don't spend enough time on. And the number 1 conversion rate optimization lever that anybody can impact is that main image. And we have seen this time and time again, where some of the top brands are testing their main image like 20, 30, 40 different times. And so it might be cute to think that, hey, well, I ran this PickFu poll and I tested this one main image and I did beat the competition, so I think I'm good. But what I'm seeing from some of the top and the best brands, and as everybody has heard you, John, like you guys are testing thousands of different data points here. Yeah. And so if people are testing at that level, how are you making sure that your testing is 10x what it currently is today, to make sure that you're squeezing every little piece of margin and percentage increase above and beyond whatever the competition is doing? That's what's going to set, I think, the brands apart from today, from the brands that are winning 3 years from now.
Yeah, totally.
My third and final action item here is focusing on your PPC listings and your rankings at the same time. One of the most important things you uncovered there is like, it sounds like one of the best strategies you guys have employed is really going after those long tail keywords and bidding slowly, maybe bidding at a lower range to see, hey, how many impressions can I get at this rate? What about this rate? And continuing to increase. Again, this is all done via software, but increase it till you're getting the impressions that you need. Then monitor, what am I doing? How am I performing on the organic side? So I think the biggest takeaway here is make sure when you're running your PPC campaigns that you have a direct correlation to how am I ranking for those keywords? And if I spend more, am I increasing my ranking or not? Because if it's not, then you're probably just wasting a whole lot of money and it's probably a conversion issue. So lots of things to dive into there. But John, is there anything else that we did not talk about that you think the audience needs to hear today?
I don't think so. I think maybe just some slight, updates on the takeaways. Like one is, I'm not an advocate of you should always be 100% in stock, but I am an advocate of like optimize your in stock rate to the financial things that, levers that you want. Because sometimes going from 98 to 100% might only improve revenue 2%, but it might create cash flow implications or profitability implications of like 10%. So the magnitudes, staying in stock is very, very expensive. But I think getting clear around, is the optimal in-stock rate here 97% or 94% or 99%, and being like accountable to that, optimization. And then I would say, on the conversion side, yeah, there are a bunch of other levers, even outside of images and titles and bullets and A+ content, coupons, subscribe and save. deals, bundles. There's a lot of those other kind of pieces that you want to be able to look at and benchmark against of like what is actually driving an outsized return in terms of that optimization. But other than that, I mean, yeah, we could talk forever on a lot of this stuff. It's super exciting. We're passionate about it. And I hope we're able to provide some value today to your listeners.
Yeah, John, I love your in-depth knowledge here of the whole Amazon platform. Really well spoken. Final questions that I ask every guest. So question number one, what's been the most influential book that you've read and why?
Oh my gosh, there's been so many good ones. I think probably the theme for today would be like Atomic Habits. That's a James Clear book. He came and spoke at Accelerate a few years ago. I had already read the book. I think I read it again or listened to it again after that. But I'm a huge, disciple, I guess, of like breaking things down to their atomic structure and making slight changes that get magnified in a bigger macro way.
Awesome. That is a great book recommendation. I have read it and wholeheartedly support it. Question number two, what's your favorite AI tool that you've been using and how have you been using it?
Oh my gosh, there's so many fun ones. We literally have tons of Slack channels dedicated to a lot of this. We're enterprise users across a lot of the different LLMs. I would say like fun, like guilty pleasure one is Lovable. It's just like if you like thinking through how to vibe code across UX, UI, or micro apps or things like that. For me, it's helped speed up the way that I examine trade-offs in the user experience or in the journey. We use it for internal tools. We use it for external tools. We have full-fledged like UX, UI designers and obviously devs and things like that. But I think the speed of trade-off and the speed of like conceptualizing what you're trying to solve for in a given flow, it doesn't have to be actual software, I think is very, very valuable. And it's been a fun one for me.
Awesome. All right. Third and final question. Who is somebody that you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that other people should be following and why?
I mean, it's weird. I wouldn't say like some of these people are like in the e-commerce space, but if you think about like even Sam Altman, if you think about, I think it's more just like AI, right? Or even if you think about like the All In podcast, those aren't like e-commerce specific types of podcasts, but those are some of the ones that I listen to a lot or go back into even on X or whatever, and just think through like the world is changing so fast. And what are the new dynamics? What are the constraints? And honestly, like it's so hard to keep up. I don't even know where OpenAI will be by the time this airs. But the pace at which they are partnering, innovating, releasing, at the time of this recording, they just barely, launched their new browser. We'll see what goes from there. But it is a scorching, feverish pace. What a time to be alive. So I don't know. That's what I would say. Almost anything focused on AI is super exciting and kind of like the dynamics and how it's shaping the world are some of the podcasts that I'm most excited about right now and pieces of content, thought leaders in that space.
Totally agree. You never know what new announcement we're going to get tomorrow. So, John, this has been a pleasure. And if people want to learn more about you, they want to follow you, they want to reach out to you or Pattern, where's the best place to do so?
Yeah, you can just go to LinkedIn and find me. You can email me. I'm john@pattern.com. Don't spam me, please. And then, if you just go to pattern.com and any of our social channels, I think find your way around. I think hopefully what you would find from us, we're not a super salesy kind of like hard push culture. We love helping people. We love helping explore, whether it's going international, whether it's looking at TikTok, whether it's looking at other domestic marketplaces, whether it's just a challenge dealing with unauthorized sellers or gray market or parallel import or any of that sort of stuff. Hit us up. We love chatting. We love helping brands kind of regardless if they partner with us or not.
Awesome. Well, John, appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks so much, Josh. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecommbreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.